Good morning, everyone, and welcome. This is Joe Scarice, founder and host of the Creative Bird Strategy House and podcast live on all the social media buckets that you could think of, actually, at this point. But you could find us at our website, creativebirdstrategies.com. We load all our podcasts up to there. We're hovering around the 50th mark of our podcast uploads, so you could take a look at all of our subjects that we've been providing: education, networking, and strategy. That is our goal here. This is what we provide. This is what our give back is to the industry every Saturday and Sunday morning. Saturday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and every Sunday morning, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We provide education, strategy, and connection. I want to thank our sponsors this morning. As always, we wouldn't be here without them and their support and their collaboration and their cross marketing. I'd like to thank Perkatech, our social media strategist, Yardell Perkins, who is basically a business partner and associate in this podcast. He provides the graphics, the social media insight, the updates, the uploads. He can provide you the social media strategy that you need to take your business to the next level. Take a look at my websites, such as creativebirdstrategies.com or josephscarice.com, and you'll see the talent right within his work every day that's been provided through us. We've been together in partnership for the last 10 years. We actually met through a networking event that we both held um, back in the day. Every Friday morning, we had it at a different breakfast spot. It was kind of cool. And we have stayed in collaboration since then. We ran events together. We're actually, word has it, we're contemplating holding a live event every second Monday starting in September, and we might put that together. I'm still in the think tank mindset of it right now, but I'm thinking about doing it at our offices in Philadelphia the second Monday of the month. So I'm putting some things together. It'll be held just like the podcast. It'll be more of a mastermind discussion, educational discussion. So if anybody has interest to step up and be part of that from a volunteer perspective, let me know if you're in that greater Philadelphia, South Jersey market. I want to thank Realty 411, Linda Pelagas, your national distribution publication. Realty 411 provides also national events throughout the country. She has been in collaboration with Creative Bird Strategies in Philadelphia, Denver, Florida, New York, and we've been part of her events on the West Coast in LA. And it's just been a great relationship we've had with her in the last several years. I want to thank MB Capital. MB Capital is your unsecured business line of credit referral program, which sets you up as a real estate professional or business to business with unsecured business lines of credit through your LLC. And then I want to thank Lendmark, which is the nationwide asset-based lender where I am a senior loan analyst providing DSCR loans for 1 unit through 25 units, single family up to multifamily, fixed to rent, fixed to flip, new construction in the 1 through 4 space, build spec or build to rent as well. We look at blanket loans. We provide strategy and advisory for real estate investors nationwide. Nationwide. So today we're going to get caught up on some updates on the market. Very busy week on the DSCR and fixed to rent space. Um, as far as I'm seeing right now, I'm seeing a complete flat line to um, to the home ownership. There was no spring market. It was completely dead. I mean, it was completely stagnant. So what this is telling me, and to the advantage of the market, it's a landlord market. It's a buyer's market. You could dress it up any way you want. There's always going to be some hot spots for homes to be purchased for home ownership, but right now it is extremely stagnant. Um, you could just see where it's all going. At least in the urban cities, it's going toward a rental market, and then in certain suburban settings as well, depending on the income level of that market, it's also leveling off. It's really your competition in making offers on properties now is the investor. So when a home buyer is going into a house, the investor is going into the house, undercutting them by offering a quick closing, less paperwork type of environment, closing within 30 days, where right now the banks or the broker bankers just don't have the speed and expedition to get these deals closed in the home buyer space. So let's get updated on some of the articles that I've seen that caught my interest in the past week. So very interesting article that just released, and I will. And by the way, this discussion today, common rental real estate problems and solutions. Already, I've posted an article on LinkedIn. I've shared it onto Facebook, so you could find this article, pretty much anywhere out there that I've put together. So, and to Ed Dowling's down below, inventory is low, but inventory is stagnant. So if you see the listings that are out there, they've been sitting. Days on the markets are higher. Okay, you're not seeing massive amount of people at open houses. There's harder pushes for the listings to move. So not to say we agree to disagree or in that statement, Ed, but inventory is low in certain markets and it's higher in others. Or there's been price discounts. I'm seeing more price discounts on homes in the last quarter than I've seen in the last 2 years. So I'm seeing more price cuts depending on where you're at. So to get that selling point. But let's get into our articles. Really cool article. I'm going to post this up today because I thought it was really interesting. The housing market meets the sandwich generation. That means you're seeing more people taking care of aging parents while supporting their own children. So you're seeing combined homes of generations taking care of one another and identifying housing to facilitate that more so today than any other time, which I thought was a really interesting article, which I will post up as well sometime this morning. And then I want to talk, also saw another article that caught my eye. Credit Bureau reports heightened consumer concerns on inflation and interest rates. Guys and gals, we are not going to see interest rates coming down. I'd be very happy to see the average rate of 7% which has been our average in the industry over the last 40 years, stay still. The rates closed out at about 7.07. We're at the national average where we should be. The problem is we have an inflated market. We have an inflated cost of goods. We have inflated inflation. We got to stop putting money out to everybody else, but start taking care of putting money back in within our country. And I think that inflationary concerns will diminish. The only entity that creates inflation is government. So we really need to kind of take a step back and realize what's really going on in our market and in our country first, and then worry about everybody else. We can't take care of our own shop. We can't take care of others. So mortgage rates, I think, are going to stay. They're not elevated. They're where they're supposed to be. I don't really see 5% anytime soon, knowing what's still ahead with commercial conversions, cost of goods, and inflationary numbers. Another thing I'm seeing that, we need at least another 4 million units of space for people to have housing. What if all the malls and all the commercial conversions came to the front line available for rent to all the people that need housing or affordable housing for that matter? Thousands and thousands and thousands upon thousands of units. Where would we be? Would we have a glut of rentals? That's a concern I have. If all these units come to the front line that are being converted to build the rent, conversions for eat, work, and live, what is that going to do to the smaller landlord or the investor compared to the institutional investor that's doing these massive amount of conversions at malls and commercial buildings? You bring 10,000, 15,000 new doors for rent in a city. What does that do to the average rent competition in all the neighborhoods surrounding it? You got to think about what I'm saying here. Does DSCR get impacted? Do values get impacted? If you're not getting enough home buying sales or purchases and investors are buying at discount, where are your appraisals going? This also relates to the subject that we're discussing this morning, common rental real estate problems and solutions. And it's based on an article I put together. Renting real estate can come with various challenges for both landlord and tenants. and some of the most common rental real estate problems and their potential solutions. Let's talk about some of the top, concerns. Later missed rent payments, property damage, vacancies, legal issues, and maintenance and repairs. Later missed rental payments. Are you on a software? Implement a clear rental collection policy and communicate it to your tenants, to your property management company, or yourself. Offer online payment options for convenience and set up automated reminders. On the property damage side, conduct thorough tenant screening to select responsible renters. Require a security deposit to cover all potential damages. Perform regular inspections and maintain open communication with tenants about property care expectations. Vacancies. Invest in effective marketing strategies to attract potential tenants. Maintain the property in good condition to make it more appealing. Offer competitive rental rates and consider short-term incentives like a free month of rent or signing a longer lease. Legal issues. Stay informed about the local landlord-tenant laws to ensure compliance. Use a well-drafted lease agreement that outlines all terms and conditions clearly. Consider consulting with a real estate attorney to avoid legal pitfalls. Maintenance and repairs. Set up a system for tenants to report maintenance issues promptly. Schedule regular property management maintenance to prevent major problems. Budget for repairs and have a list of reliable contractors for quick responses to issues. Good morning, Joseph. Welcome. Brief overview, who you are, what you do, and thoughts to our discussion this morning. Common rental real estate problems and solutions.
Good morning, Joe. I missed you over the last couple of weeks, so
Lucinda.
But no, this is but I saw this topic and I was like, I need to jump onto this, right? I'm a
but Joe, let's take a minute here. You missed me, you said. And this is now on video and audio, and it's on replay. I just want to make sure you got that clear.
Bills and I'm catching up on
No. Guys, everybody give a heart knowing that Joe Martella said he missed me. Okay? Now I'm good now. I'm complete. Go right ahead, Joe, to your rant.
Well, I'm glad that I complete you now.
You see?
So, no, very good, Joe. So, no, but I saw this topic and I had to jump on, right? I'm a buy and hold investor. I have 7 rentals that I own and manage, and soon to be growing that portfolio as things make sense. You mentioned that it's a buyer's market, at least coming up to where investors, it's time to chop at the bit. I do see, I mentioned many times, you don't just buy a property and just sit back. You have to monitor your market the entire time. I am seeing price cuts. I am seeing days on market increase. And you start seeing those ugly properties that realtors generally wouldn't list. They're starting to be listed. So I see realtors are actually starting to kind of compete with wholesalers, if you will, by listing those properties where they generally wouldn't list it. So there's a lot of interesting stuff that's going on in the market. For me, I think that it's not just soft enough yet. The sellers aren't soft enough yet. So, I think, I like the month of October to go buying. So, I'll take the rest of the summer off, dealing with issues that I have to deal with, and then then it'll become open season, if you will, for looking for additional rental properties. But I do know of investors that are making deals now. Listen, the common pitfalls with the managing the problems and solutions within rentals, right? You always talk about a power team, Joe, right? And that's one of them, right? When you're going to get repairs, you need several handymen on call, right? I think a lot of investors get scared of, the repair call, right? One thing that I had to get over was not everything's an emergency, right? Not that you're a slumlord, but things break in the house that you live in, and not everything is an emergency that needs to get repaired right this second. It has to get repaired, but let's say, I don't know, a bedroom door fell off the hinge, right? It's an inconvenience, but if you get that repaired in 2 to 3 days, that's reasonable. It's not an emergency, it has to be done tomorrow type thing. If you got a leaky water heater, well, that's an emergency. That's an emergency situation if a water heater is gushing water. But if it's just a drip, you probably got a couple of days and you don't have to pay the emergency repair situation. And that may be a handyman issue versus a licensed plumber issue. So, there's a lot of things that go on there that I think investors or new investors on rentals scare themselves out of. I'm looking for a better term, but it's just not coming to me right now. But they talk themselves out of becoming a landlord. I was talking to a friend of mine just last night, and he was like, "Oh, it has to be such a headache having so many rental properties. You got to deal with the tenants." No, and it's really not. The next one is your communications with your tenants. If your communications with your tenants are professional, they're going to conduct themselves, and you're setting that level of expectation with them, and they're going to conduct themselves most likely professional, right? There's always exceptions to the rule. Collection of rent. I don't go to my properties and collect the rent, and I don't like checks mailed to me because that means that I have to go to the bank. And in situations where you can't be home unexpectedly, like right now, I'm caring for a family member, and it doesn't, I can't be there to collect the rent, so it's all ACH, and I do that through free systems, not necessarily buying. And you don't have to pay for systems. There are systems out there, whether you do a spreadsheet or you use Zillow Rental Manager or you use Turbo Tenant. They do a lot of features for free. Real estate problems that come with rentals, bookkeeping, right? And I think Melissa is a bookkeeper on here, right? The accountant hated me when I first started, right? Asked me a bunch of questions, and I started keeping better records. Records also help you, if something keeps on breaking, either the handyman's no good or the tenant's being a little rough with that area, right? And maybe you have to just say, hey, can you just be a little bit more careful? A good amount of my tenants are staying. They're on their third year lease, most of them. So, I'm averaging. I would argue that I would average about 2.5 years a tenant. But they stay, and it's not because my rent is cheap. They stay because, number one, let's argue the market is really slim to none. But even when they can move, they don't, because I treat them with respect. I don't milk them, if you will, right? I'm constantly bumping them up $100 a month. If I have to bump them, I'm bumping them to cover my expense and keep my cash flow going in. And Joe, I have a decent cash flow that's coming in. So it's usually $25 or $50 a month. I bump them once a year, and I make that place their home. I'm not up their rears and saying, "Hey, you can't paint, you can't do anything." I want them to feel comfortable, because at the end of the day, turnover really is your enemy. It's your ultimate enemy. That's where landlords make those mistakes. But I think that's some of the common rental problems that come along with it, and some solutions that are out there. You got to have those contacts individually. If you're going to hire a GC for every situation, number one, they're not going to go for a $100 job, right? Number one, the GC needs to make money, and then the guy that he's hiring needs to make money. So you're not getting a $100 job. There's other apps out there like Thumbtack and TaskRabbit, where you can get someone who does a side job that can, fix that door that fell off the hinge in a couple of days, or the leaky water heater can be fixed. And I've had repairs done on those apps for as low as $50. My brother challenged me on it, and I had an issue on a property in Brooklyn. I was in Virginia for work, and he's like, "Oh, we have an electrical issue. at their house in Brooklyn. And I said, I'll get it handled. No way you're going to get it handled. You're in Virginia. I had it handled within 2 hours, and it was $70. Oh, if I got an electrician, it cost me like $300. And this was an electrician that did it on the side. Generally, most of them are union guys that do side work to put money in their pocket. So that's just some tips and tricks out there for landlords.
So what I'm hearing here is, one, we need to be at an all-time high of communication between the landlord and tenant. We need to have our bookkeeping in check as we grow our portfolio. And we need to have a maintenance openness to some other ways of getting people to get out and address work immediately upon those calls, because that sets the tone back to the communication between landlord and tenant. Did I kind of read that overview correctly?
Yeah, that was a good summary of all the babbling I just did.
And that also ties into how you missed me the last several weeks. So the general overview of this podcast, guys, is Joe Martello missed me up and above all the common rental real estate problems and solutions that all of our investors and professional services have. Is that this how I summed it all up?
I'm glad that I made your day.
You did. So I get the pick on you. You see, come back, you get your butt busted every little bit. It's all good. It's all good. So there's also some things you need to think about that I think there's repairs that landlords need to know about and be aware of and stay, eyes open. Number one is smoke detectors. Like, I don't think people are emphasized enough to have those set up and checked. Also, water leaks, like Joe mentioned, water heaters, HVAC systems, pipes, garbage disposals, if you have them as an option to your rentals, toilets, electrical work, pests like termites, ants, roaches, mice, drywall. These are things that you need to think about, not just for tenant relations and maintenance of the property, for the upkeep and for the biggest concern of turnover, but also insurance reasons. These are what the insurance carriers look at as well. And I tell you, I got a really interesting link from Justin Jefferson. He's not on this morning. Florida is completely out of control with insurance. Completely. Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, Florida. I have a feeling those states you're going to have to get your insurance in eventuality by the state. I think all the insurance carriers just want out of those states. And what do you do if the property does, you need insurance? So how the hell are you going to debt service in some of these states with insurance? But thankfully in the Midwest and the Northeast, insurance availability is there, but it's up. It's up. So you got to take care of the property, because when they come out and reinsure the property, whether you're taking it from a builder's risk, say you're renovating it in a burr and you're taking it to the stabilized environment, it's got to be in good shape. It's got to be recognized to be able to be rent worthy and insurance worthy. So I don't think people take in consideration the insurance impact to maintenance, where a lot of the problems and solutions could be addressed for rentals with tenant and landlord. Good morning, Melissa. Welcome. Brief overview, who you are, what you do, and thoughts to our discussion this morning, common rental real estate problems and solutions.
Good morning, Clubhouse. Thank you for having me up here, Joseph. I am Melissa King, owner-operator at One Last Die LLC, Virtual Assistant Services. We offer realty, bookkeeping, notary, and office management services to small businesses and entrepreneurs. I also just started a new service for self-managed property owners so that they can remotely manage their own assets while they're out with their own local network, and I can assist them with that. And that's Michigan Realty Assistant. I'm insured and bonded for your protection. If you guys want to check me out, I'm at onelastdie.com. Wow, this is interesting today, Joe, because I am a new tenant. I went from a homeowner recently to a tenant because we had to sell our home in order to get the loan to build our final home. and this is going to be an awesome place. So we got our eye on the prize there, and I had to convince my husband to kind of do the Dave Ramsey thing and go down, a little bit in the home when we were choosing a rental. I also have 3 dogs, 3 small dogs, and any landlord knows that's like a red flag, and I knew it. So I had some items I needed to maneuver while I was going through this process. And I would agree with Joe, the software programs that are out there are completely awesome if you want to self-manage. You might want to consider, if you don't have the time to get in and do it yourself, a VA perhaps who has specific experience with the software program that you're interested in. And you can remotely manage these if you don't want to use a property manager and pay those fees every month. I've got one client who's going to be utilizing my realty assistant this fall. So they just bought a condo out in Arizona. His wife's been bugging him for years. This guy is a hands-on person. He likes to treat his tenants well. That's why he has long-term tenants. He does have a couple of paper deposits, Joe, which I will be taking care of for him while they go to Arizona this fall to enjoy themselves. And one of the things that I like working with this client who's self-managing and why he keeps his long-term tenants is he considers, how am I going to make them feel as a person? And he doesn't let them do their own painting and things like that, maintenance or repair. He wants them to call. He's totally willing to pretty up the places for them. And I really like that about this particular client. That's why I've been pursuing him for several years. And just to reiterate, mutual communication and consideration between the landlord and tenant, I can't stress enough. I want to go back to moving into this particular place. An inventory checklist is probably going to be your best, not one of them, or one, let's just say that, one of your best documents that you need to keep track of, besides everything else, the income, expenses, receipts, everything that goes into your rental. I filled that out. I gave it to the property management company. I actually met my landlord. Funny thing, my husband and he have a connection from 40 years ago. Just wanted to throw that in because that's how far back connections can go, you guys. So watch those bridges. You don't want to burn too many bridges, because I do believe that helped us get in here with my 3 dogs. There were some maintenance or repair issues I put on the inventory checklist. The actual landlord doesn't like the property manager's fees. So we've all got it worked out that I can contact the landlord directly. He can get his local guys in there. He's got a couple that he uses because one's not available. That will happen. So definitely get a huge, I wouldn't say huge, but get a network of several contractors that you can use. Or, like Joe said, you can find some other local people, the gig work people. I want to add Alignable and Nextdoor. Those are big in my area. A lot of people go there for handy people. Last thing I want to mention, because I did see this, I did my due diligence on the landlord. I noticed he has this whole corner up to a gas station. All of them are in his personal name. And I'm trying to figure out how I can broach nicely that he should probably put those in an LLC to protect himself. That's all I got today. That was kind of a puke up on the audio here, but I was taking notes and I wanted to hit some of those highlights for you, Joe. Thank you.
So Melissa, my questions are you seeing an intense more of inquiry in bookkeeping on a smaller landlord level in this past half year? Now that you've been pushing it out there, are you getting at least more inquiry to the day-to-day operations for these landlords, for them to grow? Or are they coming with a shoebox of paper? What's it looking like? You know what I mean? Like,
I paper and I get electronic, and I'm glad you mentioned that because I did just pick up. There are two gentlemen. They run their own property management company. They have W-2 jobs, and I started working with them. So they are a smaller property investment company. Just two guys, two partnership guys. They own some commercial properties and other real estate investments into syndication. So I will be taking on that bookkeeping. I do also have a call on Monday with somebody who actually is a wholesaler and syndicator and admittedly said in their email that their QuickBooks were a mess. So yeah, I get all kinds, and I can work with paper, electronic, old school, new school, and middle school. I'm willing to do it all. I'm a Gen X, so I've had to learn on the fly. So
I have another question. Are you seeing the mid-sized landlord coming to you with Buildium reports or portfolio reports, or are you seeing still most people on QuickBooks? Because at a certain level, you have to use the property management company. You want to interface with your property management company, thus then translating that to your bookkeeping services. Are you seeing Buildium also becoming present in your market or people that you're working with as well?
yeah, absolutely. I have several clients who actually did start small, and as they've scaled up, and I'm still with them, they will have me do some of their entity bookkeeping as well as their personal. I'm kind of the middle person. They use AppFolio and Buildium. I'm still putting that information into QuickBooks for them. Um, it depends on who's putting the data in. Okay, I always say garbage in, garbage out. And if you're utilizing AppFolio, Buildium, and you're not doing it correctly or utilizing all the tools that software program will provide to you, or even if you don't have the staff, which is unfortunately the issue that my particular client, they have the staff in the office, but they're so busy doing everything else. And he's mentioned to me before that sometimes they haven't reconciled on time. So he doesn't even go there and pull those powerful reports that he has access to, only because the accounts haven't been reconciled in time because of a labor shortage. So there's all different kinds of things that go into it.
Yeah, I've been a consultant for a very large group that owns probably close to they're hovering between 300 and 400 doors at this point, and I've been brought on to consult and strategize, and I sat down with the gentleman and his father last week for dinner, and I'm like, listen, you guys have to interface either with AppFolio or Buildium, because if you plan on doubling up on your portfolio, QuickBooks is going to bust. It's going to literally implode on you right in front of your eyes. And I said, has your management company offered you a portal, either AppFolio or Buildium, to interface with what you're doing? They're like, oh yeah, they said they were going to do it, and I'm like, no. Either they're going to do it or they're not going to do it, or you fire them. Because I said, you're giving them a management fee to pay for their AppFolio or their Buildium for their other clients right now. And you're taking it on the shoulder. I said, so you need to either open your own Buildium account and then set the standard. And I think this is where a lot of the problems and solutions can be made with communication with the tenant, with later non-payment of rent, security deposit usage, tenant screening, a lot of little things. The maintenance, repair maintenance tracking, and was it addressed? Was it paid? Is there a warranty to it? I think there's a breakdown with management companies because they're taking on so much business, they lose the visual, physical relationship with their client that's the landlord, and don't facilitate that form of assistance, and they're going to lose clients, and they're going to, and the righteous property management companies are going to pick up more business because, like, I referred this client also to another management company, and they're like, yeah, you got to go get Buildium because we're on Buildium, and you need to interface with us, and yes, you need a bookkeeper. And coincidentally, one of my private money investors that invests with him, his brother's a CPA and is starting a bookkeeping service locally to where these gentlemen are. They're going to hire him more from a CPA bookkeeping perspective, So they got that. They got the transaction coordinator involving a lot of the transactions, and now they're going to set themselves up for building because these are clients that want to be at 1,000 doors within the next 4 years, and physically they're not going to be able to do it because they'll have constraints and problems with their tenants with a lot of the top issues. Maintenance, noisy, security deposits, bookkeeping, rental payments. If they're not collecting rent correctly or maintaining inspection alarms within their systems, they're not going to be able to stay up with it. Okay?
Yeah, that goes back to the garbage in, garbage out. If you don't get all of your systems as clean as possible, I know there's once you jump into something, there's always something to fix. Okay, but excellent. They've got their transaction coordinator, their bookkeeper. I mean, those are the data people right there that will assist them to put all of their property information into AppFolio, and then they will just start. They will be amazed at what those software programs can do for them.
Well, it's going to be painful at first because it's going to be a lot of data entry. But I can't. I see the cost benefit for these guys because they're growing so rapidly, and they're learning as they're growing. So it's not like they're open to ideas and strategies and discussions. So like I get together with clients and sit down with them and understand what's going on. How can I help? I'm having more meetings on that type of level. Not about just doing loans. It's about the market. That's why I'm Melissa. Funny enough, I'm really entertaining the idea of having a mastermind meeting again. I haven't held my own meeting in consistency in really almost pre-COVID. So because I think people need a place to go to vet, to mastermind. It doesn't have to be a room of 50 people. I'd rather have a room of 10 to 15 people that are hyper focused and engaged on solution making and creating a transformation for their business. Because I think that like Joe holds a great think tank subgroup for South Jersey investors first Wednesday of every month, and people are they're more comfortable to open up, whether they're inexperienced, they're new, they're experienced. They're getting that stuff out into the front line and coordinating things. Like you're making. To me, half my day is connecting people to others, and it's quite ironic that you reference Alignable. I'm a big fan, as you know, Melissa, of Alignable. I feel like it's this massive BNI of vendors that I can cross collaborate and make those introductions and help other people make reintroductions to others. So when I email them for some of the things I do, I immediately invite them to Alignable because I feel like that's like an open pool, like where Joe was talking about, like Thumbtack. That's a great place to get cost-effective maintenance people to jump on board right away for a fee to take care of them because they're killing what they eat. So they need to complete the job to get paid. And there's a ranking system in Thumbtack that if you don't do right, you get thrown under the bus. So I'm going to go back to Joe before we go to Bob. Joe, what's your thoughts on some of the things that Melissa has discussed and some of the rubs and some of the positives and negatives to rental real estate problems and solutions?
No, listen, I mean, one thing that she mentioned was QuickBooks, right? And I've tried QuickBooks and I've tried Quicken, and those systems just don't jive with me, right? For whatever reason it is, I just don't like them. And Melissa talks about she deals with people that probably middle of the road, right? With the box, the cardboard box, the shoe boxes that are full of receipts and what have you. I'm not that person either. I used to have a very bad relationship with paper, Joe, where I would have just stacks and stacks of paper. I've learned to revolutionize myself and scan everything as I get it, and upload it into my OneDrive so I have everything at my fingertips if I need it. And that's the way I go, Joe. Go ahead.
So, do you think it's a misclassifying of costs? Is it maintaining several accounts? Are the recording of maintenance expenses, keeping paper records to virtual? Is it the reconciliation? Where are we seeing the fallout for real estate professionals right now, which impact the rental real estate problems and solutions. So, Joe, Melissa, if you want to stay on mic, where are we seeing the problematic issues? Is it the reconciliation? Is it the maintenance of invoices? Is it just paper? What is it?
I would argue that there's two separate things that split out, right? There's the operational side of the business, and then there's the back office, right? And I think that the back office is the most ignored portion of the investor business because generally most investors, and I was just recently at a landlord panel with some very experienced investors, 20, 30 units, and there was Sherman on the panel. I asked, well, how do you prep the taxes? What's your record keeping? And all three of them just like, we got to get better in that.
Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. That
Yeah.
exploded. Because it's so true. Yep.
Exactly. So they're operators, they're good in building their portfolio, but at the end of the day, Joe, if you mismanage your portfolio on the record keeping side, and I'm sure that Melissa is going to talk for hours on this, right? But if you're mismanaging your record keeping, it's very tedious, it's very annoying, but it's the business, right? It's the unpopular side of the business, but you're leaving money on the table there too, because you might be missing tax deductions that you're eligible for. And I'll cue to Melissa to expand on that, right?
Oh, tax deductions, overspending. I mean, you really have to protect yourself on that because it can get really easy just to pay that bill because, you want to move on to other stuff. Yeah, absolutely. That first one, the back office. You kind of have to do both. You've got to keep both on your plate at the same time because they work together. Operational depends on the back office, and if those two aren't working well, you're going to have problems. That's just a fact.
Well, thank you guys, and thank you for your insight. And this really ties into a lot of things where I think the newer investor gets caught up with analysis paralysis because of all these things, because they're scared to ask these questions. Because a lot of these RIA groups, they just want to sell you something. You need to hear what's going through their mind. You need more of a think tank discussion, and that's why we granulate these subjects here in Creative Birth Strategies, because we peel that onion. I'll call the real estate industry one giant onion, right? And you got to peel it out, right? And there's a lot of bad spots to an onion, okay? And we need to unravel that so we draw a comfort level, because being an investor is just not easy, okay? You need to see the whole big picture, and it's width and depth, okay? And there's so many layers. And Melissa, you touched on something, the LLC. I don't think enough people are taking the asset protection of the LLC seriously enough. Like I think the older the guard, they didn't need it because they could just go to the local bank, get a free toaster, and get a loan. And I think that mentality has gone away. The banks don't want the smaller investor loans at all. They'll take the deposits, but they won't. They don't want to. They can't put that type of paper on their books. They just can't. They can't afford it. There's too much risk. There's bad landlords out there too. So this leads into introducing Bob Cheswick. Good morning, Bob, and welcome. You got a lot of ammunition between Joe and Melissa. A little background on yourself and thoughts to common rental real estate problems and solutions.
Hey, Joe, thanks. So my name's Bob Cheswick. I am president of Chesapeake Corporation, 22 years forming corporations and LLCs, also a former civil engineer, predominantly working in transportation and local land site projects in northern Delaware and Philadelphia regions. I'm not a lawyer, not an accountant, and for all purposes, not an engineer. So this is not legal, tax, or frankly, engineering advice. See, my disclaimer just gets longer and longer there, Joe, the more you drag me into these topics. First of all, Melissa, to your point with the Michigan person, punch me in the face, grab my contact info. We'll get something on the calendar. I have some thoughts of some talking points for you for that situation. Second of all, where you guys are both, before I dive into what I've seen as far as the problems, we outgrew QuickBooks years and years ago, and I used to be a sales rep for QuickBooks. I used to go out and do installations and training and all that throughout the Philadelphia region, and I even got called in to do some large-scale projects in New York City and Washington, D.C., when they couldn't get local vendors that would do it at a reasonable price. You will outgrow QuickBooks way too quickly. That's the biggest problem. The more you scale up, the more it cannot handle it. And I've talked to accountants recently, and a lot of them have been saying that QuickBooks is pricing themselves out of the small business market, which is bizarre because that is their market. There's a lot more I would say, but not in a public forum. But suffice it to say, QuickBooks, if you're not familiar with accounting, you're probably going to use it because you'll learn it quick. It's easy to learn. It's intuitive to learn. However, once you start scaling, and this definitely happened to us, we had to switch away from that and go to a full board accounting system, which frankly is probably more complicated than we need, but it provided the flexibility that we need, and we're in the process of transitioning everything. And wow, the amount of data we're entering, it's insane. So we had to make some special provisions for that, just so that we're not entering years and years and years of historical data that ultimately just needs to be archived. So there's a lot of considerations to that. Now, tying into Joe's intro with the LLCs and all that, and the banks and everything, and the common problems. So the most common problem I see, and then I'll get more into the other part of it. So sorry if I go a little long-winded here today. The most common thing that I see is when people set up an LLC and they already are established renting properties. And the issue with that is they're saying, okay, well, now I got to transfer these properties over to the LLC, but I've got a loan on it, and it's a personal loan. And what do I do about the contracts that my tenants have signed? So you got a couple problems here. Number one, and I'll let Joe. This is Joe's territory, but I just tell them, and listening to these rooms enough to know, you've got to refinance it into a commercial loan to move it into the LLC. So your lender's going to have to play ball with you on that. And this is outside my area. You have to deal with the lender on this, or find a new lender that will do it. But if you took out your property in a personal loan, you can't just sign that deed over to the LLC because the loan will get called on you. So be careful with that. Number two, if you wrote the contracts and you used your personal name on it, you have to amend the contracts. And the issue with that is if you started as a non-LLC, you convert to an LLC, the liabilities of anything that happened prior to that conversion are still on you. And in some states, the LLC can actually be undone in a court of law and basically disregarded. So let's say an incident occurred, then you switch to an LLC. A clever attorney can basically say, well, now they're just trying to hide everything in the LLC, and the judge will say, all right, fine, we're cracking the corporate veil, and we're basically cracking the corporate veil in reverse and seizing out the assets of the LLC. So it won't protect you from anything that happened before you form it. So you have to remember that. But also, you're going to wind up in a situation where you have to renegotiate your contract with your tenants. You don't think those tenants aren't going to fight to get extra provisions, lower rent, maybe a few extra perks, and you're stuck until you sign that, get that contract signed. You've got to do all of this. So the biggest issue I see, and I'm not saying don't do it, but what I'm saying is you have to figure you're going to need to get a lawyer and an accountant involved if you decide to make the conversion after you're already established and have income coming in, because a boilerplate operating agreement isn't going to help you. A boilerplate landlord-tenant agreement isn't going to help you. And if you're in certain states like New York or Delaware, where you have landlord-tenant codes or rent control, you have yet another layer of bureaucracy. You've got to pay attention from day one on this. I have had customers that they'll start LLCs for properties going forward and roll the properties over as they do when they do a tenant switch. So when the tenant moves out, that's when they make the move to the LLC and then release under the new tenant. Sometimes it's just easier to do that. Again, state by state, city by city, and if there's a loan in play, you've got to look into that. So that's one of the biggest issues I've seen, is people trying to do the conversion midstream. And one other interesting factor, and I'll bring this up briefly, but this will be something that I go into more whenever Joe and I can get that podcast scheduled, which just so everyone knows, the holdups on my end, just because of some major complications going on the back end, of my life here right now, that my lack of availability. New York State, we'll put the federal reports aside. New York State just started starting in 2026, they're going to do their own version of the federal reports, where you have to publicly disclose the names and home addresses of everyone who owns or financially benefits from an LLC. The purpose being to expose landlords and force landlords to personally identify who they are to their tenants, so their tenants can not only know their names but know where they live. They're deliberately doing that because they're trying to. And their argument is, we want to get rid of the slumlords. Whether you believe it or not, like it or not, it is the law in New York. And other states are starting to follow suit on this. Florida and Connecticut have done it for years. California is doing it. Washington State's doing it. A lot of states are making you expose your home address as an LLC owner, which has created an interesting scenario. Corporations are starting to come back in vogue. So I've been getting a lot of inquiries from even people who have LLCs. How do you convert an LLC to a corporation, or should I just do a corporation instead? Again, you got to talk to a lawyer to see how these things work, and the rules are different state to state. But starting to see, that's going to be another rental real estate problem, is that I know a lot of every single day I get somebody calling me saying, I want to remain anonymous. That's illegal in the United States. And if you're looking online and seeing there's these firms in certain states that are saying, well, we'll keep you anonymous, Nevada cracked down on the firms doing that, and those attorneys that were involved in that are now sitting in prison on Class C felony charges for perjury. And by the way, so are their clients. Not too good when you and your lawyer are both defendants, because you're both facing felony charges. Watch out for anyone who says they'll put their name on the annual reports to hide your identity. That is illegal. It is a felony. People are being convicted of it. I know there's people that advocate those strategies. States are cracking down. Feds are cracking down. Be careful. So basically summing up, the biggest issue that I see on my end is when you're in the rental market, converting to the LLC midstream. You've got to plan it right, or else the liability is just going to fall right back on your shoulders at the end of the day. I know that was a long-winded one. Again, not intended as legal advice. Joe, I toss the mic back.
Well, please stay unmuted for a minute. And this ties back into our other moderators. I'm sensing the biggest problem for a rental unit right now is keeping everything insulated within the entity, and then translating that with the relationship with the landlord and tenant. So when you crack the veil of the LLC, you crack the liability in your face. All right. So what are some steps from the LLC setup initially, Bob, that you see the pros and the cons? I feel there's a lot of bad information being taught at the local RIA level to do all these layered type of protective measures. None of them give accessibility to a non-QM bank or a bank to lend upon. It's way too many layers. I saw one layer today this week where they were layered by like 4 different entities. I'm like, I can't lend on this. I'm not even going to submit the loan. I said, well, it'll take us 14 years to figure out who's going to be the guarantor under this whole thing. Why do you think all these RIAs and organizations are selling these bullshit packages to clients that don't, and none of them have banking industry specialty? I get a kick out of these people. They're giving banking advice, and none of them are licensed bankers. None of them are anything. Like, what am I missing here? If you could help me out a little bit.
So I'm not going to mention the name of the group, but if you recall, Joe, I recently gave a presentation somewhere in your neck of the woods where the guy running it threw me under the bus right before I went on stage and said that everything I'm going to say, just ignore it. So I wonder why I wasted my time going there. And again, not your fault, but privately, you and I both, I think, know who I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, and that person has zero expertise in the field. Zero.
And so it comes down to a couple of factors. Number one, without mentioning the names of the national touring groups that were selling those ideas of, come to our class, spend a ton of money, and we'll teach you how to invest in real estate with no money down, blah 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 blah. Kind of sounded like a multi-level marketing scheme. Those places were paired up with some less than ethical people in my industry to sell those very anonymous Wyoming, Nevada LLCs. They tried to do Delaware. Delaware cracked down on them almost immediately. They're like, nope, you're not doing that. But Nevada and Wyoming went after them, and then Nevada turned tail and started throwing those people in jail. So, including the investors, unfortunately. But the reason it's because bad information is filtering through the internet, and unfortunately, in Google, the algorithm supports the clicks. It doesn't support the good versus the bad. We all know this. But the big thing being that these real estate investors have this idea, and the government, and again, the government's cracking down on it. The reason they're layering like that is they're trying to hide their identity. And this year, we purged a lot of our clients who we caught trying to play that game, and it's not a smart game to play. I work from home, and I had clients that were putting my address down as their principal place of business, and all of a sudden, here comes their bank statements, here comes letters, and all that stuff, and they're sending it to my addressed to a company name. And I called them up. I said, why am I getting the mail? I said, I'm stamping return to sender, and it's going back in the box. And they said, well, that's what I'm paying you for. No, read the contract. You get caught doing that, you're done, and you're not getting your money back. So we dumped a bunch of people this year that were doing that. And we started notifying and when we resign as the agent, we tell the Secretary of State, these people are using our address under false pretense. And the Secretary of State in Delaware, if you list your address, principal place of business, as your registered agent, they will not accept your annual report. And if you file on the last day, they charge you $200 fine. So these people are paying a ton of money and getting penalized by the state for false information. So the big thing, though, is they're layering through all these multiple layers because they're trying to hide their identity. At the end of the day, that's what it's coming down to. I have never seen a structure that included more than 3 layers that wasn't realistically set up. The 3 layers, and I'm talking 3 layers of companies, it would be and 2 layers really, and you've seen if those of you who have been to my lectures, you know how I've gone over this with a backhoe. Usually what most people do when they're starting out is they set up an LLC or a corporation, put the property in it. When they get to about 3 of them, they'll usually set up some type of a holding company or operating company that overlays on the top so that everything filters through a single entity. That's for tax reasons. That's for consolidated tax returns. That's to make lending easier, moving money between properties easier without piercing the corporate veil. Sometimes above that, you might see other corporate or that does occasionally happen. Welcome back there, Joe. You got kicked out. But that does occasionally happen. But if you start adding more layers on top of that, you're going to have a really, really complicated problem. Now, Joe, to your end, I have an answer for you on how to simplify that reporting if somebody's coming to you with these multiple layers. And that is, you should request a copy of the beneficial ownership information report that's filed with FinCEN, those new federal reports. Tell them you want a copy of that because that will identify the actual beneficial owners. And if those owners are listed as under FinCEN ID numbers, and Joe, we can have an offline discussion about this, but if people use the FinCEN ID to do the report, which is totally legal, people who own multiple businesses will do that, tell them, just go back and say, okay, I need a report. I need a printout of the report for the FinCEN ID application. And anyone who has a FinCEN ID can download that as a PDF and send it to you. Then you will have all the information that would be on their driver's license or photo ID. And of course, request, obviously you're going to request a copy of that. But that's how you're going to match it up, is using the new BOI reports. So, and those aren't public, but that's going to, and I wouldn't be surprised, Joe, if the firm you're working for starts requiring that next year, when all companies have to be up to date with the reports.
Yeah, we've been talking about that. We're bringing legal in house, so that's coming.
Yeah, I figured that was coming, but that if you wind up with a wacky situation with that, all you do is say, I need to see the BOI report on this entity. And then if you see a bunch of FinCEN numbers, say, okay, I need to see the FinCEN ID reports for these numbers, and make them give them to you. And then that way you'll know exactly who's who, because that's going to bust through every single layer. Because when you file the BOI reports, unless it's an exempt entity, you have to go through to the humans. You can't hide behind a trust anymore, or an LLC or a corporation. So the whole, like I said, the whole problem, and this is really taking a hit on us, because when people hear that you have to file all these disclosures now, they're walking away from even setting up an LLC. And that's not just my firm saying that. We're seeing it industry-wide that LLC formation is going down like a stone.
Yeah.
Corporation formation is starting to go up a little bit in some states where the LLC disclosure is getting a little thick. But at the end of the day, you're just going to screw yourself when you need that protection and it's not there. So, do you want to hide behind a thick glass window where people know who you are, or do you want to just stand out in the middle of the yard where somebody can come by and whack you? I mean, it's metaphorically speaking, that's kind of how it is right now. So. Yep. I know that was long-winded and all that, but I think everyone got the gist of it.
So let's bring this back into perspective in the overview of the presentation and discussion this morning on the podcast. Common rental real estate problems and solutions. Open communication and fostering that relationship with landlord and tenant and your power team, and make sure it's respectful and open, I think is important. Clear agreements, ensuring the terms and conditions are clearly outlined from the lease to your relationships with your service providers, your mechanical contractors, etc. And last but not least, education. You need to be an educated real estate professional. Both your landlords, both the mechanicals, the general construction, the real estate agents, the insurance providers, the lenders. You need to stay educated on the rights and responsibilities under all the laws that you're working within. Because by addressing these problems proactively, and they're not problems, I shouldn't call them problems, these common threads proactively, I think landlord and tenant relations, as we're going more into the landlord market, really away from the home ownership market, but more in the landlord environment and property management environment, I think is going to be very important. So let's get some outros from Miss Melissa. Thank you for this morning's insight and thoughts to common rental real estate problems and solutions.
Yeah, this was Melissa King, owner-operator at One Lifestyle Virtual Assistant Services. One thing you just said, you didn't want to call them problems. Years ago, I had a manager in banking, and she didn't like to call them problems either. She called them issues. And I have used that for so many years. And it helps. It's a good mindset. So erase problems, just call them issues, and I think that'll help you.
Thank you, Melissa. And Mr. Joseph Martello, your outro in regards to common rental real estate problems and solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. So listen, you need to be active, right? And we were talking about keeping educated, and I read something this week that says, if you don't continually educate yourself, your knowledge will be obsolete within 2 years. And it's completely valid with the way the world changes, probably a little bit sooner than that. So you always got to constantly educate yourself and listen to podcasts like this because, Joe, you keep on getting the information and keeping it fresh, and especially keeping up with current affairs, which are really boring for most people to do and don't have the time to do. And hearing it's easy. But as investors, listen, don't think that just hiring a proper manager is going to just resolve your issues, right? There's still the bookkeeping issues that Melissa loves to talk about. And there's still the maintenance issues because when maintenance happens, you're still going to get the phone call. And you got to look at the cost benefit of that, right? You're giving approximately 10% of your gross rent away in order to manage that. And when you start multiplying it by properties, that becomes a very real number that could actually pay for additional repairs and keep you cruising along or helping you with additional down payments. So that's my outro, and sticking to it. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. And I want to thank everybody staying so engaged. We're past 2 years in having this room here on Clubhouse. We're the only room that has our own website, creativebirdstrategies.com, where you can download all these great podcasts that we've had with moderators over the past several years. We're the only club that offers educational CE for licensed real estate agents throughout the country on asset-based lending. We're also the only club here, or house you want to call us, on Clubhouse that offers educational worksheets to stay abreast of how to pencil your deals down correctly. We'll set up strategy discussions with you. We'll do video podcast marketing with you if you'd like, and cut and edit an interview with you to market yourself out there in front of the public. And we're here every Saturday morning, 8 a.m., every Sunday morning, 9:30 a.m. We're very consistent in what we do. I want to thank our sponsors, Mr. Yardell Perkins, our Perkatech. Reach out, have a social media strategy discussion with them, have them audit your background, see if everything works for you social media wise. Realty 411 with Linda Pelagas, our national publication that provides also national real estate events for real estate professionals and investors throughout the country. MB Capital, your unsecured business line of credit referral program, providing unsecured business lines of credit for real estate professionals throughout the country. And Lenmark Capital, where I am a senior loan analyst, and we provide DSCR loans for single family through 25 units. We offer fixed to rent, single family through 25 units, fixed to flip, single family through 25 units, build to rent, or spec development, new construction 1 through 4 nationwide. And also I provide strategy and advisory. And then, last but not least, I also move my licenses to my real estate licenses to TCS Property Management Services. We're pretty much in the East Coast, east of the Mississippi markets. If you'd like to discuss a joint venture or partnership with TCS Property Management, please reach out to me. We're developing a call to action tab on my personal website. Follow me on josephscarice.com or follow me on LinkedIn. This article on what we discussed today, it has been posted to LinkedIn and Facebook. So if you follow me on either or, you will find the article itself. I want to thank everybody this morning. And my quote to finish off our podcast and our discussion this morning: when the why is clear, the how is easy. I want to thank everybody. I'll be ending the room in the next 30 seconds. And thank you.
Bye, Donna.
Say bye, Donna.
Bye, Donna.